Hey guys, I'm Tyler and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to replace this with this guy. So the only client I take orders from, the wife wanted a rustic Roman numeral clock for our mudroom, and that's what I set out to do with this build right here. This is all built from upcycled pallet wood, and kind of cool, all of the wood from those pallets came from supplies that were delivered when we were building our addition. Our first order of business for this build was breaking down the pallets. Now, I haven't broken down a ton of pallets in my time, but I've always found that the easiest way is to cut it down with a circular saw between these support boards. Easy, quick, and you don't have to go through metal blades on your sawzall if you were to cut up the nails instead. When I broke down the pallets, they were a little bit damp, not super bad, but I let the boards dry for several weeks and had a moisture reading of about 7.5%. You can find a link to that moisture meter down in the description below if you are interested. Out of this stack of wood, I was actually able to cut up 3 clock faces. Moving over to the jointer, I flattened one side and then put that side up against the fence to square up one edge, which we will run against our table saw fence in the next step. And like I mentioned, over to the table saw where we will run that squared edge up against our fence and cut the boards down to their final width. Nothing special for that width, just making sure we square up the other edge and get rid of any egregious imperfections if there are any. And now moving on to the glue up. Like I said, I was able to get 3 panels out of these boards and I glued it up with Titebond 3. Mostly use Titebond 3 because it's a darker glue, so it would match the rustic look of the wood better if there was any glue squeeze out that I couldn't get to. If you have a lot more patience than I do, or you don't have a CNC, you can certainly cut these Roman numerals by hand, but it will certainly be tricky. We are lucky enough to have an Inventables X-Carve. This is actually the new 750 version, new to my shop anyway, so I'm going to be using that. I sketched up my model in Easel, which is a free piece of software provided by Inventables, and this allows you to draw things and control the X-Carve. You don't need an X-Carve to use Easel, so you can use the link down in the description below if you would like to try it out and possibly see if you would like to get one of these machines in the future. Having one of these is definitely not a necessity in a shop, but it is certainly nice to be able to have it doing a repetitive, accuracy needed task while you can move on and do something else. And while we let the machine work on the other clock faces, we will get this one cleaned up. I broke off the remaining board and then brought it over to the router with a flush trim bit to cut off the tabs and any overhanging splinters of wood. And then it was on to a lot of hand sanding. I used these little sanding strips from Gator Grit that I cut down into tinier squares so that I could get them in the Roman numerals and sand off all those little hairs. This was the longest single task of this entire build, but a little bit of elbow grease goes a long way in making it look fabulous. The clock movement that I got, link to that down in the description below if you are interested, didn't quite poke through the clock face, so I routed out a little pocket in the back using my trim router so that it would poke through the face completely and allow me to bolt it down. Now gluing on the face of the clock to that backer board that I had. Depending on the thickness of your clock face, you may not need the backer board, but I needed it to allow the movement of the clock to be hidden so that the whole thing would sit flush up against the wall when it was hanging there. I was really hoping that I wouldn't have to do anything to darken up the letters, but as you can see in this next picture, they completely blend into the wood and are not visible at all. I used a dark espresso stain and a syringe to put the stain directly into the Roman numerals and the second marks without getting anything on the other faces of the wood. This worked fabulous and only took me a few minutes to get all of those Roman numerals very visible. Then, because I was an idiot and cut the backer board bigger than the clock face itself, I took it over to the router with a flush trim bit and cleaned up that edge. Then I quickly changed from the 1/4 inch collet on my router to a 1/2 inch collet and put a 45-degree chamfer to hide the plywood of that backer board so that all you will see is the reclaimed pallet wood material. Now moving on to the finish. For that, I used 3 equal parts of linseed oil, which smells awful, denatured alcohol, and shellac. I use this because I wanted to leave the wood as natural as possible and not really give it any shine that you kind of get with the polyurethane. Would I recommend this finish? Meh, it's okay. I'm not a big fan, especially because it stinks, but it definitely worked well in this application. After installing a hanger so we can hang this thing on the wall, it is time to put the movement in. Again, this is available, linked down in the description below, from Amazon, and it bolts onto the clock face using a brass nut, and then you simply push the hands into place. Well, there you are, guys. Not a very difficult project, but definitely a unique one. And I got to use the new X-Carve, at least new to me, X-Carve. And it's a pretty unique project for our mudroom here. And I think my client kind of likes it as well.
I really do. I wanted a rustic barn clock for our new space, and I knew this guy could make it for me. He can make anything. So he ordered the movement online, and look, it is just, it's perfect for this space. It's warm, it's welcoming. Just love it.
Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully it helps some of you out. You can also check out the project file for this on Easel. There'll be a link down in the description if you wanted to cut this on your own. But either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please hit that thumbs up button, helps us out a ton. I'm DIYTyler with the wife, and we'll see you guys next time.